and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Back in March, it looked as if there was a great conspiracy being created within the Obama administration. As conspiracies go, this conspiracy would have to actually have a plan to begin what can be seen as a betrayal of the security of Eastern Europe. See, 25 years ago, we were watching the wall come down in Berlin. And now here we are with a greater conspiracy. So the war hawks see it as a victory, and the Western world see this conspiracy as being as a way to create a lack of security in the world. See, the Obama administration, for its part, has started a relentless campaign of propaganda. Also, condemnations, denunciations against Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin. Many people in America today have now joined the Russia Haters Club, which has ignited the debate over whether or not the Cold War has returned. What's really sad is during the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev declared the world is on the verge of a second Cold War, and the United States is to be blamed for it. Gorbachev has now said the United States and the West yielded to triumphalism after the Soviet Union's dictator-filled bloc of satellite governments rapidly collapsed in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Gorbachev suggested that the United States should not have attempted to lead the world in the power vacuum caused by the implosion of the Soviet Union. He also condemned the United States and its Western allies for failing to settle conflicts in the Middle East, Yugoslavia, and more recently, Ukraine. Gorbachev has also mellowed out a bit when it comes to his criticism of Vladimir Putin. Despite strongly criticizing the Russian president in the past for his dreams of annexing eastern Ukraine, Gorbachev implored Western leaders on Saturday to consider carefully what Putin really wants. In fact, as the United States has been caught up in its elections, Ebola scares, and ISIS obsession, the rest of the world is beginning to see that Putin, while levying harsh criticism against Barack Obama, sincerely wants to find a way to lower tensions and ultimately build a new basis for partnership. In other words, our Russian leader now wants to engage with talks with President Obama. President Obama, what does he say? Nah, he disagrees with everything, backs off, doesn't want to engage the leader, and it looks as if the trends are not looking good for the United States. Now, when we talk about trends, we have to talk about the TrendsJournal. It's the only journal out there that illustrates what's happening. It's actually an oracle that I use every once in a while, and the man behind it is Gerald Celente, and we're so glad to have him on the program tonight. Gerald Celente, welcome to Ground Zero.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me on, Clyde.
So you hear now, here we are 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it's embarrassing because, I mean, you have Angela Merkel saying anything can happen, hope is there, but where is the hope? Where is the change? Where is all of this that we were all, you know, those who lived through the bringing down of the Berlin Wall and the idea of hope, the idea that communism has finally died, that now we can live in harmony with one another, and here we are 25 years later at odds with each other again. This is embarrassing, and it just shows the lack of leadership, doesn't it?
Well, it's more than embarrassing. It's threatening. What they're and Cole. By the way, we wrote in the TrendsJournal. It had to be back 3 years ago when things were heating up again in the Middle East in 2011 actually with Syria, and they were taking out Gaddafi. The talk heating up then. We called it Cold War II because Russia, of course, had alliances, particularly does still with Syria, and the Cold War II now has been heating up for a while. I say threatening because, you know, these people, they're, you know, this is above their heads, you know, in the sense that you have a military that can't win a war since World War II. Let's call it what it is. You know, enough for this charade that, oh yeah, now we got a plan and a strategy. They lost in Korea. They lost Vietnam. Well, we could have won Vietnam if you only gave us more freedom to kill. We only killed 3 million of Vietnamese over there and poisoned the joint with Agent Orange. If you gave us another, you know, maybe 5 years, we could have won. Well, that's their excuse. You know, we didn't give them enough firepower. And, of course, they lost in Iraq, and now we're back there again after the commander-in-chief He came up with a phony line, we got to save them Christians on the mountain. This is a humanitarian mission going back several months ago. And now, of course, we have advisors in Iraq. Well, they're not advisors, they're troops. That's the same kind of cheap lingo they used back in Vietnam, including Kennedy using it. And then when they lost Afghanistan, the longest war in American history with no end in sight. And then I forgot Libya, that humanitarian mission. Yeah, we got to save those people against Gaddafi. Because if he stays there, there'll be a humanitarian mission, and we got to stop it. So we'll bomb the place, destabilize it, and turn it into a free-for-all so it could destabilize more of the area around it. So now they're playing with Russia. Does anybody get it in their head? Napoleon couldn't defeat the Russians. Hitler launched the largest military offensive in history, and he couldn't defeat the Russians. Oh, Obama, Cameron, and Hollande are going to beat him? What, after they play golf and cricket? What is this? This is a bad joke. You have the same imbeciles with different names that got us into World War I, a totally avoidable war, that are now bringing the world onto the edges, the brink of World War III. It's in front of, and the lies just keep pumping out there, and the disgusting media in this country keeps selling them. Oh, I'm sure, Clyde, you've seen them, the 32 tanks, 17 Howitzers, and 18 tanks and sub-tanks and over-tanks going over the border last week.
Yeah.
Kev reported it, but they didn't show one photo.
No, they did not. I mean, we keep hearing all these things coming out of Europe, but it's mostly out of Western Europe. In Western Europe, the European Union has it in for Russia. Vladimir Putin, in his speech at Sochi, said that he doesn't want to be a part of the backroom deals. He doesn't want to be a part of their new world order. I know that he's involved with BRICS, which is another attempt at a new world order. So it's his new world order against our new world order, fighting it out to the bitter end and calling upon all of his allies to do so. And what allies are going to stick by us as we're creating a breach of security in the United States because of our own gains, not because we care about others. It's because we want our own hegemony. This is what is happening. And you try to point it out to people, and people say, oh, give Obama a break. No, I'm not going to. Look where we are now, 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And where are we? We're back to fighting Russia again. It doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense. And again, the stupidity, starting this whole sanctions game against Russia. Sanctions are an act of war. It's putting you out of business. It happened in World War II. They don't talk about that either with Japan. Japan was undercutting the markets, just like they're doing again now with devaluing the yen to 7-year lows. It's against it's depreciated some 50% against the Chinese yuan and the Korean won. But going back to World War II, what did the United States do? They started putting sanctions on Japan. They cut them off from oil, from rubber, from natural resources.
Right.
They're doing the same thing now with Russia. And who are they hurting? They're hurting not only the Russians, they're hurting the Europeans who are still in a recession. So it's madness. And again, the lies, at least, like you said, you tell people, I stopped talking to people. I don't care. One guy, they'll start talking to me. I say, look, you know how to fix automobiles. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to fix automobiles. You're over your head. I don't even want to go into the details with you. So I just cut it off. Because here is the detail. The detail is that the United States broke the agreement set by Gorbachev and Reagan. And that was that the Soviet Union would return Eastern Germany to Germany, and NATO would not expand any longer. They were stopping where they were at. And then Slick Willie, the Slimer Clinton, the biggest sellout this country's had probably since Woodrow Wilson, who sold us out to the Fed and got us into World War I. The guy that gave us NAFTA, GMO foods, deregulated the communications industry, killed the Glass-Steagall Act, and has set up the whole Great Recession. I could go on with him. He's the one that started expanding NATO. And then little Georgie Bush over there, the number 2, he started expanding NATO. They've all gone back on the agreement. Nobody ever talks about this. This is the hegemony started by those neocons, those madmen in power and mad women in power that are pushing the world to the brink where we're going to look at, if it's not stopped, World War III.
I would agree. Gerald Celente with us tonight on Ground Zero. Of course, he is the publisher of TrendsJournal. Tonight on Ground Zero, fired up just like I am. 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, the creep, the NATO creep, the European Union creep, all towards Russia. Vladimir Putin spoke and said, I'm tired of the backroom deals. I'm tired of dealing with the EU. I'm tired of having Russian interests being stepped on by people who've gone back on their word. And that's exactly what's going on. 25 years after the agreement, the Berlin Wall comes down, and what do? We turn on them. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL.
You're listening to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Everyone is in on the secrets, and big things are being planned. Call Clyde Lewis now. Ground Zero.
Gerald Celente is my guest tonight on Ground Zero, the publisher of the TrendsJournal. Tonight, we're both fired up about the 25-year lack of progress after the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's embarrassing, and not only that, but it's deadly to think that after 25 years, all the hope and all we felt for the meaning of what the future would hold is now being dashed, all because of the fact that we have a leader that wants to engage our other leaders like Barack Obama and elsewhere, but we have the neocons trying to destabilize countries. You know, I think the biggest joke of all is how our stance with Ukraine, Gerald, has become this propaganda, this super propaganda push when we forget about Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt and how they both were in cahoots with each other trying to destabilize Ukraine. And no one remembers this. They all think it's like, oh, well, that was just, I don't know what they think, but it was right there on the telephone, both of them talking about how they were going to move in, to stabilize the country, and then have somebody like Biden come in and give a big attaboy and say, okay, we're going to go fight now, guys. I mean, do you remember that?
Of course I do, but you could go back even earlier than that. Oh, by the way, 2 things. You mentioned Sochi before. When we wrote this in the TrendsJournal, as it was happening, that the negative propaganda coming out from the States prior to the Sochi Olympics was like something I've never seen in my life. People probably forgot this, but don't get on a plane going to Sochi. We got intelligence from our unintelligent intelligence sources saying that they may have toothpaste bombs blowing up. Remember the toothpaste bombs?
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
They freak people. Yeah, remember that yellow water? And they're killing all those stray dogs over there in Sochi. They set this up. By the time the Sochi Olympics began, Americans' perceptions of Russia was at a 1994 low. That's how much negative publicity they pushed out against the Olympics. Going back to what you said about Victoria Nuland, you could go back even further than that phone call. Anybody could go to YouTube and you could watch it. December 13th or December 12th or 13th, 2013, this past December. Put in Victoria Nuland, Washington Press Club. There she is, ladies and gentlemen. Our Assistant Secretary of State, oh, by the way, the wife of Robert Kagan, one of the slimiest, low-life, disgusting disgusting human beings, that's a traitor to the Constitution and everything this country was founded upon, Mr. Neocon Job. Yeah, that Victoria Nuland, that husband. Here she is, walks out onto the stage of the National Press Club, brought to you by, on either side of her, Chevron and Exxon. And there she goes, shooting her mouth off about the future of Ukraine is with Europe, and that the path for Ukraine to take is the one set forth by the IMF. And it will open up the avenues for foreign investment. Then I look up, I start Googling it up. Chevron just cut an $11 billion deal to do hydrofracking in Ukraine.
And Biden's son is involved with that, correct?
Biden's son. Hunter. I can't kick the coke habit. Biden's son. That one?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, him. And by the way, Clyde, you're just Clyde. I'm just Gerald. When you're really important, you got a letter in front of your name,
Yeah.
Hunter Biden. He was appointed to the board of directors of Burisma Energy, the largest energy company in Ukraine. And it even gets better than that. John Kerry, his stepson, Christopher Hines of the Hines fortune, his partner, Devon Archer, was also appointed to the board of directors of Burisma Energy. Could you imagine if this was the other way around, and let's say it was, the vice president or prime minister of Russia's son being appointed to an energy company? The prostitutes would be shooting their mouths off and showing what a disgrace it is, and in this country, it's totally covered up.
Right. It is. I mean, and that's the thing is that if the tables are turned, then things, we point fingers and we make bad stories about it. But when we do it, it's a different story. Gerald Celente with us tonight on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. If you have any questions or anything to add to the conversation, we would love to hear from you tonight. Gerald Gerald is just summing everything up that I have been feeling for the past few months that actually our own mainstream narrative avoids. And yet the propaganda is strictly to get you to hate Russia for looking after their own people, looking after people that's near them. Of course, we're all for the European Union, ladies and gentlemen. We all want to join that happy little New World Order group, that a whole happy family of NATO, UN, and EU. Everything that we talk about anti-New World Order is all pro-New World Order there. It's a strange type of discussion, but of course it needs to be discussed. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
This is the North American service of Radio Moscow, broadcasting on 770. All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin, and therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the word, "Ich bin ein Berliner."
The sound that you hear and what you're seeing tonight, not hammers and sickles, but hammers and chisels as young people take down this wall bit by bit.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Gorbachev,
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history? The East German government said tonight they were going to make more openings in the wall, at least a dozen more. Put bulldozers right through the wall so that more people could cross to the west. How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history?
Nein, den Vorsichtsrein zu lassen und nicht durchzudringen.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and you are listening to Ground Zero. Tonight, Gerald Celente is with us, publisher of the TrendsJournal. Commentary, definitely fired up commentary about the fate of the world now. Are we on the brink of World War III? I stare at my monitors now, and the war hawk, John McCain, the biggest numbskull on the planet, is speaking to us now. I don't know. How do you keep from throwing up when you see John McCain on TV? I don't know, Gerald. It's, I see that and I know where his business is with ISIS and his business also with Ukraine. And I just cringe at the thought the American people don't think.
I mean, how could anybody look up to this guy? He's out of his mind. I call him John Insane McCain. And that other one, that Lindsey Graham. Oh. I mean, these guys shooting off their mouths, and they keep rolling them out all the time. However, I'm bringing back Dick Cheney. I mean, I've seen it. You know, the world is better off without Saddam Hussein, I tell you. Oh, yeah, it's beautiful over there in Iraq, isn't it? Another war based on lies. He didn't have weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda, just like Vietnam. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident, as they lied to us about the way it was supposed to happen. And the same thing they lied about with Libya. And the same thing about Afghanistan. We Clyde, in the Spring Trends Journal, I broke down George Bush's speech to the nation on the eve of 9/11 and then 9 days later when he addressed the nation. And I wrote the words, only a madman would speak these words, and only people dumbstruck with fear would believe them, and believe they did. I broke down his entire speech, not one fact, nothing, about why we have to go into Afghanistan. Not one fact. A man called Osama bin Laden. He actually used that phrase. Osama bin Laden was new back then. People forget, by the way, you know who created Osama bin Laden? That was our wonderful peanut farmer, that wonderful guy, that's that peace-loving man that created the Mujahideen to fight Russia in Afghanistan. People don't remember that one either.
Well, and the guy
that was another.
The guy that was in his pockets, right? Zbigniew Brzezinski, the relic who is part of the cryptocracy. And people say to me, why don't you ever name names when it comes to the shadow government? I do. Dick Cheney. You look at him. You look at people like Donald Rumsfeld. You look at people like Zbigniew Brzezinski, Henry Kissinger. I mean, they're all names that remain. In fact, while I was doing research on the Berlin Wall coming down, what was it that Dick Cheney and several other people were all pretty much skeptical of the whole thing? Of course, because having the wall come down meant peace. And when you're so tight about war as Cheney is, and when you're so tight about war and cleanup as Donald Rumsfeld is, of course you're going to be there. When you're chomping at the bit to invade the Middle East and you threaten people like Bill Clinton with the Project for the New American Century, which of course was written by Kagan, again, the Victoria Nuland hubby. You know, you sit there, you look at it, it's this incestuous group of morons that want nothing more to see the world go up in one big scorched earth policy. And I just wonder if Americans understand this.
Well, I wouldn't say they're morons. I would say they're psychopaths and sociopaths. Let's call them what they are.
All right. They are.
And then you said, look at the names. How about looking at the faces? Look at these people. Look at what Brzezinski, Cheney, McCain, Graham. I mean, this is a clown show. Kissinger. These aren't men. They're disgusting human beings. How about calling them what they are? They're psychopaths. They only know death and destruction. How many more people do they have to murder before people could call them who they are? And you look at the club, like you said. I could sum it up in 6 words: Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks. That's who they are. Mm-hmm. It's the same corrupt show, whether it's the Federal Reserve or whether it's the military-industrial complex or whether it's the D.C. gang. Look at the last elections. We just had the midterm elections. What, about 36% of the people voted? Mm-hmm. I mean, how about that for a good support of solidarity for the Bloods and the Crips, because that's what they both are.
Well, and
they like to call themselves Republicans and Democrats.
Well, we're beginning to understand. Yeah, we're beginning to understand what we do with our vote. We hand it to them. We hand it to them, and they look back and say, "Hi, I'm the government, and thank you for your vote. Oh, and by the way, now that you've given me your vote, I can do whatever I want. And by the way, if you don't do as I say, I can call the police on you, and they can come to your door, knock on your door, hurt you, or kill you. That's under my command because I've decided to militarize the police department, so I don't have to overturn things like posse comitatus, because we live in the spirit of the police state, and the state is our new religion, and that we are the government, and we are the apotheosis. We are God." And that is exactly how it is anymore. And I get people writing me saying, "How dare you say that about the vote? It's a privilege." Oh, believe me, it's not a privilege. It's nothing more than giving them a check and say, "Oh, by the way, put whatever zeros you want behind the digit so you can kill me later." That's exactly what it is.
I agree with you. As I said, they're the Bloods and the Crips. They're both murderers and thieves. I don't say that sarcastically. How many more people do they have to murder around the world? And how much more of our money do they have to steal in names of too big to fail or whatever other schemes they make up? So I agree with you totally. And again, it's this whole line about, you have a right to vote. You don't have a right to vote. Oh, by the way, I began my career at a graduate school many years ago. I used to run political campaigns in Westchester County, which was the richest county in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I also taught American politics and campaign technology at St. John's University. And I was one of the chief government affairs specialists for the chemical industry for 6 years in D.C. I worked between D.C. and Chicago. So I know what the system looks like, and I know who's in there. And what I'm saying is if people could put the faces and the names and put them into reality, these are not people you want to hang out with and invite to a barbecue, man.
No,
they're out of their mind. You know who they are? They're the same people we hated in high school and college that wanted to become class president and head of the student council. And now they're in charge.
Yeah, you never really and I said that on my election show that it's like high school. Again, the people you didn't want to associate with in high school. I remember I got a very nasty letter from a listener who said she'd never listen to me again because I have not gotten over high school. I said to her, I said, I'll tell you this, you haven't gotten over high school because this is how you are. You're currently thinking to yourself that what you're doing matters, especially to a group of individuals that are psychopaths or sociopaths. I said, it's not about high school. When I told her that I was lamenting the fact that it was kind of like high school, I says, the problem here is I've worked with the Department of Social Services with regard to children. And when I was in Utah doing my show, I remember there were 60 children in the custody of social services that died under the watch of Governor Michael Leavitt. And when I decided to put a bitch about that out there, went to the courtrooms, I got thrown out of courtrooms. I was banned from the Capitol. I was told not to even bring my child molestation charges or my pedophilia charges against the Capitol, or they would sue me. What happened? 6 months later, 2 men were arrested for child pornography. One was playing the banana game with some guy's child. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? I stood up for that and I got shot down. I got shot down by politicians and I was being ridiculed by politicians. These people have no business doing this to me. And I was angry with that. And I said, I'm never, ever going to give them my vote again. Ever. They're not going to see it. And I was angry, and I've been angry to this day, and I think people need to wise up and understand that no, they don't listen to you. They don't care about you. All they care about is their position. And once their position is there, they're not even gonna listen to you, nor are they gonna make anything, happen for you because they're too busy sucking up to the president or they're too busy sucking up to someone else. When I look at somebody like Peter King on television, everything he says is so pro-war, I just want to throw a brick at the television set.
Isn't he? He's disgusting.
He is horrible.
By the way, people say, why don't you do something? By the way, you think I got blackballed from the media. I used to be on Oprah, the Today Show, Good Morning America. I mean, I was on all the time. When I say all the time, I mean, I used to be on CNN like 4 times a month.
I used to see you all the time. It's like I knew everything about you. You're on every television show that I watched.
Well, they blackballed me when I started saying, hello?
Hey, you there? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know what that was.
But when I started talking about what would happen in Afghanistan, and then I said what would happen in Iraq, and they didn't want to hear it because this is a time when everybody's flying American flags and tying yellow ribbons around anything that doesn't move. And I'm saying, this thing is going to end up in disaster. And by the way, we're going to be putting the trailer up on our site, TrendsJournal.com. They're doing a movie on it. One of my books is called What Zizzy Gave Honey Boy, and Zizzy's the Neapolitan dialect for auntie. So Zizzy is aunt and Zizzy is your auntie. Anyway, Doris Roberts, the woman who played the mother of Everyone Loves Raymond, the TV show, plays my aunt, and the movie begins with me on the phone getting canceled, with my agent. I'm getting canceled from all the shows because they didn't want me on because I was saying that we were going to lose in Afghanistan. And I was saying, look, don't ask me. I'm a trend forecaster. Why don't you ask Alexander the Great? Why don't you ask the English? How about the Russians? Nobody's won in Afghanistan. America's not going to either. So anyway, that's how the story begins. And so I know what you're going through. And you have to stay with your convictions and your courage. Yes. Because for me, hell is taking that last breath and knowing that you weren't the person you said you were or could have been.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I've gone through some health setbacks this year, which really sucks. And they're nothing to do with what I've been doing to me. It's everything to do with, trying to survive cancer and everything else that's happened to me. And I'm saying to myself, I'm going to persevere and keep doing shows regardless of what the trolls are saying. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to fight. I've been told to back off from certain stories. I've been told all this. I mean, I've been shaking my head going, this never happened to me when I first started my program back in 95. It never happened to me. People didn't take things so personally. In fact, they wanted to know the truth. Now you give them the truth, and if it doesn't resonate with them, they immediately say, I'm tuning you out. I'm never listening to you again. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to miss you because you know what? I have to sleep with myself every night. I have to wake up knowing who I am. And I know that I give it my best shot every day, and that the sun, when it comes up, it's just another day to get it right. And so, Gerald, I admire you for your perseverance as well. We're going to be back with more. Gerald Celente with us on Ground Zero, the publisher of Trends Journal. And we'll be back. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
It's the things that go bump in the night. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Gerald Celente is my guest tonight on Ground Zero. Hey, before you go, I wanted to run something by you. The other night I was doing some reading on how fast technology is rushing up to meet us and how a lot of jobs are being eliminated because of technology. And they were talking about the wage floor or the universal wage that they are proposing. Just curious if you've heard anything about the universal wage and whether or not they're considering it because of the fact that pretty soon we'll have millions of people without jobs because of technology, and they'll have to institute a new welfare program to avoid an economic disaster.
No, I really don't know a lot about that.
Okay. I was just curious if you did, because I was reading about it the other day, and I thought that's something that sounds a lot like what Marx had called the crisis in capitalism, where that kind of Marxist saving would have to happen to this country in order to keep it from losing its capitalist stand. And I was thinking,
well, it's not capitalism anymore. Capitalism is gone.
Right.
It's the merger of state and corporate powers. You saw it with 4 words, killed it. Too big to fail.
Right.
Capitalism, there's no such thing. It's fascism. It's the merger of state and corporate powers, by definition.
It's Mussolini's
and
fascism.
You can see with the multinational takeovers.
Right.
It's fascism.
Mm-hmm. I'd said that, back when, I'm a student of history, and of course that's how Mussolini defined it. Are we in a state of despotism in this country now? Or are we being led by
Absolutely.
despots? Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, everybody could see what it is. And, just a couple of quick notes on some other things. Oil prices. This is a big one, by the way. We've been on top of this since they started declining in June. What's going on with oil is that there's more supply and less demand. So it's both things. But what it's really telling us is that there's a global slowdown going on. You're looking not only at oil, you're looking at things like iron ore. The iron ore, things like rebar, for example, in China is selling less for a ton than cabbage. So commodity prices in a lot of areas are taking a lot of hits because demand is way off. I'm mentioning this because when you look at geopolitical tensions, you talk about what's going on with the quantitative easing and now the Bank of Japan with their Abenomics, the equivalent of the United States size to GDP, pumping in $3 trillion. You have depressions, recessions, depressions, currency wars, trade wars, and world wars. And that's what we're leading into. All of the elements are in place. And our system of trend tracking, it's making connections between different fields. I'm also mentioning that because on May 2nd of 2015, from the most historic corners in the United States, the only place where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner, where the seeds of democracy were sown, we're launching Occupy Peace. And the website's occupypeace.us. It's based on 3 words: no foreign entanglements. Rebuild America. I'm in Colonial Kingston, New York. Across from me is the courthouse. John Jay was a jury here, as were 3 other Supreme Court justices. 90% of our Constitution was copied from this Constitution, New York State.
Right.
It's a time for peace, and we're going to be pushing for it.
Gerald Celente, thank you so much for being on the program. How do we get the Trends Journal?
TrendsJournal.com, TrendsJournal.com.
Thank you, Gerald. We'll have you on again sometime soon. Really enjoy having you on the program, and you take care of yourself, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you again.